Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. We've got another brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Hey, my name's Remy, and today I want to talk about something that nearly broke my marriage, but also ended up changing the way I see relationships forever. My wife, Ivy, and I have been married for several years. Like most couples, we've had our ups and downs, but over time, I started noticing a pattern, one that I wish I had recognized sooner. Every time Ivy didn't get her way, she would shut down emotionally. She wouldn't argue, she wouldn't explain, and she definitely wouldn't say what was bothering her outright. Instead, she had a different method. She'd withhold intimacy. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just a mood thing, or maybe she needed space. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized that it wasn't random. It was calculated. If I said no to something she wanted, whether it was a favor, a decision, or even a simple disagreement, she suddenly wasn't in the mood. And it wasn't just physical intimacy. She'd act distant, uninterested, and cold. At first I gave in because, honestly, who wants to deal with that kind of tension in their own home? I tried to fix things, reassure her, and sometimes even change my mind just to get things back to normal. And guess what? It worked every single time. The moment she got what she wanted, she'd be affectionate again, as if nothing had ever happened. Looking back, I can see exactly what was happening. Ivy had learned that she could control the situation without raising her voice, without arguing, and without even asking twice. All she had to do was make me feel like I was losing her. And for a long time, I played right into it. I let myself believe that if I just gave her what she wanted, we'd be happy. But this time was different. Because I finally reached a point where I realized something. I was tired of feeling like I had to earn my wife's love. And I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I remember the last straw that broke everything. Ivy had been talking about this designer bag for weeks, some limited edition, overpriced thing that, in her mind, was an absolute necessity. It wasn't just a want. She made it sound like something she deserved. I didn't argue with her about it. I understood that everyone likes nice things, and I never had an issue spoiling my wife when I could. But the way she approached it, like it was an expectation rather than a request, rubbed me the wrong way. One evening, she brought it up again. We were sitting in the living room, and she showed me the bag on her phone for what felt like the 100th time. "Babe, my birthday is coming up. This is the one I want." Her voice wasn't excited or hopeful. It was firm, like she was locking in a deal. I glanced at the price. It wasn't impossible, but it also wasn't the kind of money I could just throw around without thinking. "Ivy, I know you really want it, and I'll get it for you. Just not right now," I told her. I kept my tone neutral, making sure not to sound dismissive. I figured it was a reasonable response. I wasn't saying no. I was just saying not yet. But to Ivy, not yet was the same as never. Her expression changed instantly. She let out a dramatic sigh and tossed her phone onto the couch. Then came the silent treatment. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, calculating how she was going to punish me for not immediately giving her what she wanted. When then, she finally snapped. "Because you're saying not now, like that actually means something." I shrugged, keeping my cool. "Soon, Ivy. I just need to handle a few other things first." That wasn't enough for her. "Forget it," she muttered, getting up and walking to the bedroom. I sat there for a while, staring at the blank TV screen, wondering when we reached this point, when every conversation became a battle, when compromise turned into control. I didn't think much of it at that moment, but looking back, that was the first sign of what was coming. That night, after my usual routine, I slid into bed beside her. Normally, I'd put an arm around her or pull her close. Nothing major, just a simple, natural thing that couples do. But the second my arm touched her, she pulled away. "Don't," she said flatly. I blinked, confused. "What?" "I'm not in the mood for anything," she clarified, as if I had just made some inappropriate move. I hadn't even initiated anything beyond a simple touch. This was a calculated response. This was punishment. "I just wanted to hold you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Well, I don't want you holding me," she replied without even looking at me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling something shift inside me. I had seen this pattern before. Every time I didn't fold to her demands, she withdrew affection. Every disagreement led to cold shoulders, silent treatments, and now, outright rejection. And every time, I had been the one to apologize, to smooth things over, so we could go back to normal. But this time, I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see it for what it was. I wasn't going to beg for affection like a child who misbehaved. This was intentional. And for the first time, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to play this game anymore. Instead of wasting my energy on trying to get her attention, I turned that energy toward myself. In the days that followed, I started filling my time with things I had once enjoyed but had let go of. The guitar that had been collecting dust in the corner, I picked it up again. The books I had abandoned halfway through, I started reading them. I even got back into working out not because I wanted to impress Ivy, but because it felt good to do something for myself. If she didn't want to talk to me, fine. If she didn't want to be around me, fine. I wasn't going to chase her. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to make things right. I was just letting things be. The shift happened naturally. I was just done putting all my attention on someone who only gave me the bare minimum when it suited her. So when her friends came around, I didn't hold back. I was the same charming, funny, engaging guy I had always been, but now I wasn't reserving that energy just for Ivy. When her friends came over, I made sure to be involved in the conversation instead of sitting in the background like I used to. If one of them got a new hairdo, I noticed and complimented them. If someone cracked a joke, I laughed and added to the fun. I made eye contact. I listened when they spoke, nodding, reacting, asking follow-up questions. And you know what? They responded. They laughed at my jokes, they started conversations with me, and they genuinely enjoyed my company. At social gatherings, I stopped hovering around Ivy. Instead, I became the center of attention in my own right. I wasn't overdoing it, I was present. I made sure people felt heard and appreciated, and in turn, they gravitated toward me. And Ivy noticed. She wasn't used to seeing me this way, so at ease, so effortlessly engaging. She wasn't used to me not seeking her out, not looking at her for approval, or waiting for her to let me back into her good graces. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one chasing after her. I was just being myself, and suddenly, that version of me was in high demand. Ivy had always been confident in her ability to control the situation. This time, I shifted my energy elsewhere. And it didn't take long for her to notice. At first, I could tell she wasn't too concerned. She probably thought I was just sulking, waiting for her to decide when I was worthy of affection again. But when she saw effortlessly connecting with her friends, something shifted. I wasn't focused on her. Her friends took notice too. They started lingering around me more, cracking jokes, and pulling me into conversations. Some of them even reached out to me directly instead of going through Ivy like they used to. And that, more than anything, caught Ivy off guard. One evening, we were at a small get-together at a mutual friend's house. Jessica, a friend Ivy had known for years, laughed a little too hard at one of my jokes and playfully touched my arm. It wasn't anything serious, but it was enough for Ivy to tense up. And when another friend, Melanie, grinned and said, "How come your husband is so much fun? I feel like I don't even know this side of him." She didn't say anything, but she was paying very close attention now. It only got worse from there. Another friend, Vanessa, playfully nudged Ivy and said, "Girl, if you ever get tired of him, send him my way." She was clearly joking, but Ivy didn't laugh. Over the next few days, Ivy became more observant. I caught her watching me at social events, her eyes scanning my interactions like she was trying to pick apart every conversation, every smile, every laugh. One night, I walked into the bedroom to grab something and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, my phone in her hands. She didn't even hear me come in at first. When she realized I was there, she quickly placed the phone down like she hadn't just been going through it. The funny part? There was nothing to find. I hadn't done anything wrong. But the fact that she even felt the need to check told me everything I needed to know. She was losing her grip, and she knew it. Her frustration only grew from there. The more she tried to find something suspicious, the more it frustrated her that she couldn't. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't sneaking around. And that realization? It was eating her alive. One evening, I came home from work, and she was dressed differently. Instead of her usual sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, she wore a fitted dress that held the right parts of her body perfectly, her hair done neatly, and makeup lightly applied. She wasn't going anywhere. She was just home. But it was clear she wanted to be seen. Then came the conversations. Out of nowhere, she started making an effort to talk to me again, asking about my day, laughing at things she normally ignored, and throwing in compliments here and there. "You've been looking really good lately," she said once while setting the dinner table. I just nodded and thanked her, keeping my response casual. In the past, I would have taken that as an invitation to get close again, but not this time. I knew what was happening. She was testing the waters, seeing if I'd take the bait and fall back into the same cycle where she dictated when I got attention and when I didn't. Then, something I hadn't seen in a long time, she started cooking my favorite meals. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but after the third time in a week, it was obvious. Ivy wasn't the type to suddenly turn into a doting wife without a reason. Before, she only did things like this when she wanted something in return. But I wasn't biting. I still talked to her, still sat at the dinner table, still responded when she spoke. But I wasn't acting desperate for her affection anymore, and for the first time, she seemed to feel what it was like to be on the other side of the push and pull dynamic she had built. My attention was no longer something she could demand on her terms. It was something she had to earn. She tried harder. She laughed at my jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. But the thing was, I saw through it all. She was trying to get a reaction, to make me acknowledge her effort, so she could feel like she was regaining control. But I held my ground. For the first time, I could tell, she was the one feeling uncertain. I was sitting in the living room one day, scrolling through my phone, when she walked in and stood in front of me. "I miss how things used to be," she said. Her voice was quiet, but I could hear the weight behind it. I put my phone down and looked up at her. I didn't say anything, just waited. She took a breath, her fingers fidgeting like she was struggling to get the words out. "I feel like we're distant." I kept my face neutral, still not saying a word. I wanted to see where she was going with this. Finally, she sat down beside me, her shoulders tense. "Can we talk?" That was it. That was the moment. The moment I had waited for. The moment when she finally acknowledged that something was wrong, that she had played a game for too long and lost control of it. I wasn't going to rub it in her face. I just needed to be honest. I sighed, leaning forward and resting my arms on my knees. "I love you, Ivy," I said, my voice calm and steady. "But I'm done playing games." She looked at me, her face unreadable, but I could tell she was listening. Really listening. "If you want affection, it has to be real," I continued. "Not something you hand out when you get what you want. That's not love. That's control. And I'm not doing that anymore." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. Instead, she lowered her eyes, her fingers twisting together in her lap. "This marriage isn't about control," I said, my tone softer now, but still firm. "If you want to be happy with me, we both need to stop treating each other like competitors. I'm not your opponent, Ivy. I never was." Silence filled the room. For the first time in a long time, we weren't playing roles. We weren't maneuvering around each other, waiting for the other person to make the next move. We were just two people, sitting in the same space, facing the truth. She nodded slowly, exhaling like she had been holding her breath for days. "I hear you," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. I observed the changes in Ivy's behavior. She wasn't just throwing on a cute dress or making my favorite dinner to butter me up. She was actually trying. I noticed it in the small things first. She asked about my day, not just as a formality, but because she actually wanted to know. She stopped rolling her eyes when I said no to something, and instead, she asked why and actually considered my answer. It was different. And honestly, I appreciated it. But I didn't rush to meet her in the middle this time. That was the old me. I had learned my lesson. Love isn't supposed to feel like a transaction, and I wasn't going to play that game anymore. If she wanted this marriage to work, it had to be built on mutual respect, not on her deciding when I was worthy of affection. So I let her do the work, not out of pettiness, but because I needed to know if she was serious. And she was. She didn't use intimacy as a weapon anymore. She didn't push me away when she didn't get her way. She finally understood that our relationship wasn't about control. It was about partnership. For me, the biggest shift wasn't in her, it was in me. I had learned to value myself, to recognize that I deserved a marriage where I didn't have to beg for basic love and respect. I loved Ivy, and I had never wanted to leave. But I also refused to be manipulated again. And because of that, because I had drawn that line and refused to go back, our marriage actually became better. It wasn't perfect, because no relationship is. But it was real. No more games. No more punishments. Just two people who had finally learned how to love each other the right way. And let me tell you, standing up for myself was the best decision I ever made. Now, I'm not saying this is a one-size-fits-all solution. Every relationship is different. But if you're in a situation where someone is constantly holding affection over your head like a reward, ask yourself, is this really love or is this control? Because the truth is, if someone really loves you, they won't treat intimacy like a paycheck you only get if you behave the way they want. So what do you guys think? Have you ever been in a situation like this? Do you think I handled it the right way, or would you have done something differently? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We've got another interesting story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Harvey, and this is the story of how a single joke destroyed my marriage. I was married to Susan, a woman I once thought I would spend forever with. From the very beginning, we both knew we wanted kids. Even before we got engaged, we'd sit for hours talking about what our future would look like, how many kids we'd have, what their names would be, who they'd take after. We imagined a big family, noisy dinner tables, and messy playrooms filled with toys. I could already see myself teaching my son how to ride a bike or reading bedtime stories to my daughter. Susan loved kids too. She talked about them with so much excitement. She would show me videos of cute toddlers saying, "One day, that will be us." When we finally got married, we didn't want to wait. We had spent years talking about the kind of family we wanted. So, as soon as we said our vows, we started trying for a baby. At first, it was exciting. Every month felt like a fresh start, a new opportunity. We turned it into a little game, playfully guessing whether we'd have a boy or a girl first. Susan would bring home baby name books, and we'd sit together, imagining what our child would look like, whose features they'd inherit, and what kind of parents we would be. But the months passed, and nothing happened. We shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe it was just a matter of time. People always say, don't stress about it. It'll happen when you least expect it. So we took a more relaxed approach, telling ourselves it would happen when the time was right. But as months turned into a year, and then into two, the excitement started to fade. The game we used to play turned into silent hope, and then into unspoken disappointment. Every negative pregnancy test became harder to ignore, and every month felt heavier than the last. By the beginning of the third year, the doubt had settled in like a weight on our shoulders. We stopped talking about nursery plans. The baby name books were shoved to the back of a shelf, forgotten. Susan tried to act like she wasn't worried, but I could see it in her eyes. Conversations about children that used to make her smile now made her uncomfortable, and she would change the subject or force a tight-lipped response. We couldn't ignore it anymore. Something wasn't right. So, after 3 long years of waiting, of hoping, of pretending that time would somehow fix everything, we finally decided to get checked. The tests were simple, just routine blood work and a few other things. We waited anxiously for the results, hoping for some small issue, something that could be easily fixed. But when the doctor finally sat us down, his words felt like a punch to the gut. "Harvey, your sperm count is extremely low. Right now, it's nearly impossible for you to conceive naturally." I remember just sitting there, numb, unable to process what he had just said. My heart was pounding. Susan was beside me, staring straight ahead. She didn't say a word, The doctor kept talking, explaining that I wasn't completely infertile. There was still a small chance. He suggested boosters, a strict diet, and regular exercise to improve my fertility. But all I could hear was the one part that mattered. I wasn't able to give Susan the family we had dreamed of. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like my whole world had collapsed. I had failed as a husband. What kind of man couldn't even give his wife a child? Susan told me she wasn't going anywhere. She held my hand and said, "We'll figure this out together." But as the days passed, her actions said something completely different. She started avoiding conversations about babies. When friends talked about pregnancy or showed off pictures of their kids, she would suddenly change the subject or walk away. I don't see anything wrong with avoiding things like that, but the challenge is that when something like this happens, she holds the anger for days and sometimes weeks and keeps transferring passive aggression to me. At first, I thought she was just trying to process everything like I was. But then, the little jabs started. "I just don't get it. How can two healthy people struggle to conceive?" She once said out of the blue over dinner, shaking her head. Maybe if we had started earlier, things would be different. They were small comments, thrown casually into conversation, but each one cut deeper than the last. I feared she would leave me. At first, it was just a passing thought. But over time, it became an obsession, something that sat in the back of my mind from the moment I woke up until the moment I forced myself to sleep. I tried to ignore it, convince myself that I was overthinking. But the signs were everywhere. Susan wasn't the same. She started coming home late, always with some excuse. I grabbed dinner with the girls, or I just needed to clear my head. At first, I believed her. But then it became a pattern. She spent more and more time outside, barely speaking to me when she was home. She used to kiss me goodnight and used to fall asleep with her head on my chest. Now, she barely looked at me. The warmth in her eyes was gone. One night I finally asked, "Susan, are we okay?" She sighed, rubbing her forehead like the conversation itself was exhausting. "I don't know, Harvey. I just wish things were different." That broke me. I had done everything I could. I took the boosters, changed my diet, and exercised every day. I followed every piece of advice the doctor gave me. But no matter what I did, I couldn't fix us. The silence in our home grew louder. Some nights, I'd sit in the living room, staring at the pictures on the wall, the ones where we looked happy, where we still had hope. Now, the house didn't feel like home. It felt like a waiting room for the inevitable. And every time Susan opened her mouth, I braced myself. Because I knew another jab was coming. It's just frustrating, seeing everyone else move forward while we're stuck. Maybe we weren't meant to have kids together. She never yelled, never outright blamed me. But her words sliced me open in ways no argument ever could. I wanted to believe she was just hurting, that this was her way of dealing with it. But deep down, I knew she was already halfway out the door. Susan and I attended a small gathering at a friend's house one evening. It was a casual backyard get-together, nothing extravagant, just familiar faces, music, and conversations over drinks. I wasn't particularly in the mood to socialize, but Susan was enjoying herself, drinking more than usual, and laughing a little too loudly. I sat back, observing and enjoying the vibe of the evening. At some point, the conversation shifted to children. A couple at the party had just announced their pregnancy, and the group erupted in excitement, offering congratulations and sharing parenting advice. It was a conversation I had grown used to avoiding. But then someone directed the question at us. "So, when are you two finally giving us a baby to spoil?" The words were innocent, said in a light-hearted tone, but they felt heavier than they should have. Susan laughed. Then, without hesitation, she spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Harvey? Oh, please, he's not even man enough to get me pregnant." A thick silence followed. The laughter stopped. Conversations died. A few people glanced at me uncomfortably, while others awkwardly pretended they hadn't heard. But I had. And there was no pretending this away. I didn't react. I didn't argue, didn't tell her to stop, didn't ask her why she would humiliate me like that in front of people we both knew. I simply stood up and walked away. I wasn't angry at that moment. I was done. There was nothing left to fight for. When I got home, I walked straight to our bedroom, pulled out a duffel bag, and started packing. I took only the essentials: clothes, my wallet, toiletries. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't staying. After zipping up the bag, I took one last look around before stepping out of the house that had once felt like home but now felt like a cage. I checked into a hotel across town and turned off my phone. For the first time in a long while, there was no tension, no forced small talk, no second-guessing every word that left my mouth. Just silence. And for once, the silence felt peaceful. When I finally turned my phone back on the next morning, I was met with a flood of messages. Friends who had witnessed what happened had texted, asking if I was okay, and offering to talk. Then there were Susan's messages. One from last night, asking where I was. Another from that morning. Are you hurt because of what I said? It was just the drink. I stared at the screen, reading her words over and over. There was no apology, no remorse, just an excuse. I didn't respond. And when she realized I wasn't going to, she didn't bother texting again. A few days after I left, Susan finally saw the letter I had written and left it on her dresser that night. It read, "I stayed through everything. The fights, the disrespect. But if even my greatest pain is a joke to you, then I have no place here." The text she sent me told me she read it. I don't know what she felt when she read it, but I do know one thing. She hadn't expected me to really leave. Maybe she assumed I was just angry and needed space, that I would be gone for a few days or a week at most before coming back like nothing happened. But after reading that letter, she must have realized just how serious my leaving was. At first, I thought she had seen it and ignored it. I didn't hear from her the first day or the next. But then, she started reaching out, calling, and sending messages, asking me to meet her so we could talk. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. But her persistence didn't stop. The intensity of her calls and messages over the following days made it clear. She was finally understanding that I was gone for good. Her messages became more frequent. Her calls didn't stop. When I didn't answer, she started reaching out to mutual friends, asking them to talk to me, to convince me to come home. But I had made my decision, and I wasn't going back. Then, about a week after she started reaching out, she received the divorce papers. That was my final answer. I wasn't going to argue, plead, or fight anymore. I was done. I didn't owe her any more explanations. After leaving, I moved to a new city and started over. It wasn't easy at first, adjusting to life alone, rebuilding myself from the ground up. But in time, I found peace. I learned to enjoy my own company, to let go of the pain I carried for so long. More importantly, I learned that I was more than my ability to have children. Then I met Naomi. She was different. Kind, supportive, and understanding. We took things slow, and for the first time in years, I felt truly wanted. A year into my relationship with Naomi, she sat me down one evening with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was something in her eyes, excitement, nervousness, maybe even a little fear. Then she said it. "Harvey, I'm pregnant." The moment the words left her mouth, my mind scrambled to process what I had just heard. At first, I let out a small laugh, assuming she was joking. But when she didn't smile, when she just sat there waiting for my response, the amusement disappeared, and confusion took its place. I stared at her, trying to make sense of it. Pregnant? How? That was the only thought that ran through my head. I shook my head almost instinctively. That's not possible. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't help it. Out of nowhere, Naomi was telling me she was pregnant. My mind jumped to the only explanation that made sense to me at the time. She had to be cheating. I remember the way her face twisted with hurt when I accused her. She was offended, but she didn't yell or cry. Instead, she calmly told me that she hadn't been with any other man. She was sure that I was the father, 100% sure. But I wasn't about to take any chances. I had been through too much to just blindly accept something that didn't seem possible. I insisted on a paternity test. Naomi didn't hesitate. She agreed right away, telling me I could do whatever I needed to feel at ease. Still, as we waited for the results, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. If the test came back and confirmed my fears, it would shatter me. But if by some miracle it proved I was the father, then what? When the results finally came in, I felt my whole world tilt. I was the father. I must have read those words a dozen times, but they didn't feel real. I sat there in shock, my hands gripping the paper, trying to understand how this was even possible. The doctors had been so certain before. My sperm count had been too low, my chances close to nothing. And yet, here was living proof that something had changed. I booked an appointment at a fertility clinic the very next day. I needed answers. I needed to know if this was a one-time miracle or if something inside me had truly changed. The tests confirmed what I had once thought impossible. My fertility had improved significantly. Whether it was the lifestyle changes I had kept up over the years, the passage of time, or something science couldn't quite explain, my body had done what I thought it never could. I was no longer infertile. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Susan, my ex-wife, had just been patient, if she had held on a little longer instead of letting her frustration push me away, we could have had the family we always dreamed of. But standing there looking at Naomi, I realized I had no regrets. My past marriage had been built on pressure, disappointment, and unspoken resentment. But with Naomi, things were different. She loved me without conditions, without expectations. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I have no idea what happened to my ex-wife, Susan, after I left. I never reached out, and she never tried to find me. Maybe she moved on and had children, maybe she regretted everything. Or maybe she convinced herself that she had done nothing wrong. I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care anymore. Some things don't need to be revisited. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I'm not bitter about the past. In fact, I'm grateful. Life gave me a second chance. I found someone who values me for who I am, not for what I can or cannot give. She stood by me without conditions, without passive-aggressive remarks, without making me feel like I was never enough. Looking back, I see things clearly now. Love isn't just about being together when things are good. It's about staying when things get hard, about patience, about choosing kindness even in frustration. Susan had the choice to stand with me, to be my partner in the struggle, but she chose to humiliate me instead. And that's the kind of thing you can't take back. Words leave scars, and the ones said by the person you trust the most cut the deepest. If there's one thing I hope people take from my story, it's this: patience and respect matter. If you truly love someone, you don't throw their pain back in their face, no matter how frustrated you are. You don't humiliate them, especially not in front of others. And you don't let your temporary emotions ruin something that could have been beautiful. But in the end, I'm glad things turned out the way they did because I ended up with someone who truly loves me for me. That's the story, folks. I hope you take something from it. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Do you think Susan deserved another chance, or was walking away the only option? And if you know someone who needs to hear this, make sure you share it with them. Until next time, take care.